Hey, this is my color grading tutorial for 2023 Premiere Pro. And today we're gonna get a clip from looking like this to this in a few easy steps. So let's get into it.
Life theories, this nice delivery got me rated. Banana berries and smooth metals overdated.
So the first thing I want to mention is this is how I'm color grading now in 2023. Last year I used a bit of a different technique and I'm now kind of moving over to DaVinci slowly. So maybe next year it'll be completely different as well. So that's one thing I always want to say to you as well, is always keep progressing, keep moving. Even with this technique, this is the way I do it and this is the way that works for me. But you know, someone else might show you a different way that might work better for you, that you enjoy. That's the whole beauty about creating an art, is you kind of find your own way of doing things and it's your own style. So always keep learning, look for better ways to do things. Just, you know, never stay stagnant, just keep learning and progressing. So the reason I want to share this with you is this is a real journey for me. One of my first jobs I had as a video editor, the first cameras I brought were a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, and they didn't have any other kind of way to shoot apart from log. And I didn't know how to color grade, and I was, you know, trying to color grade on the job basically. And I kept looking up tutorials online and all they were saying was boost up the saturation. This is just terrible advice, because basically saturation is, you're just going to kind of be pulling up all the colors, and some of those colors you obviously want, but a lot of them you also don't want, like harsh skin tones and all this. So it was a very stressful time for me until I learned the proper way to color grade. And then actually it's very basic once you kind of understand how to do it. Another thing I'm going to mention is I am using Creative LUTs in this tutorial. I'm going to show you two ways of doing this. I'm going to show you with a Creative LUT and without a Creative LUT. But I'm going to give a shout out to the LUT pack that I really love to use, and I'm going to be using them in this tutorial. And they are the OSIRIS LUT Pack. You can get it from color.io. I've got an affiliate link in the description, so you can go and buy the pack for yourself and try them out. They're an incredible LUT pack. I've been using them for a long time. I really just love the way they shift the colors in the image and make certain tones pop. As I mentioned as well, this is going to be in Premiere Pro. So if you're into DaVinci or anything else, hopefully I'll have one of those tutorials coming soon, but for right now it's in Premiere Pro. So the first thing we're going to do is convert log to Rec 709, and this is like the easiest step you can take, and it's basically going to get your footage looking like it was just a standard picture profile, not log at all. Basically that's what Rec 709 kind of is. You can find graphs online to show you the color space of Rec 709. Now you have kind of Rec 2020 and Rec 2021, and they've got a lot more colors in there, but Rec 709 still seems to be a color space that a lot of people are using. So the first thing I kind of want to do is try to get it to Rec 709, and then you can kind of get all creative from there. And the way you'd convert it to Rec 709 is basically just to find the camera model on the manufacturer's website, and they should have a free converter there for you to download. The most you'll have to do is just probably create an account, and then that's it, and you can basically just download the free LUT from the website and drag that into Premiere Pro. I'm going to show you how to drag that into Premiere Pro now. I'm not going to show you where to get the LUT pack from though, because obviously it depends on the camera you're using and the make and the model. Like if you're using a Blackmagic, it should be on the Blackmagic website, you know, the LUT you can get. Or I'm using Sony, so I'll find the Sony website and then find the A7 IV and then find the converter and download that. It should be a .cube file. Once you found your LUT, open up applications on the Mac. If you're using Windows, then you might have to Google where to find this. Open Premiere Pro, right click on Premiere Pro, just click Show Package Content, Lumetri, LUTs, Technical, and you want to drag it in there. So as you can see, I've got my S-Log3 to Rec 709, both of them in that folder that I use often. And like I said, that's always the first step I'll take when color grading. The reason why it's so important to find the right converter is with log footage, some like the A7 IV, for instance, my A7 IV, you know, S-Log, the colors might be around here, right? In terms of the saturation, you're trying to get it up to about here, but then the DJI footage might be around here. The correct converter will take it from here to the correct color space. Whereas if I was to put that on DJI log, then it's going to be way overshot in how much color is in the image. So it's so important you find the right converter. Also, you have specific tones within that log. So for instance, Blackmagic log might be have a different kind of blue, or might pull out a different blue compared to like S-Log. And this is also the problem with boosting the saturation, is if you just boost the saturation, then say Sony has kind of a bit stronger blues, the blues are just going to end up way strong. But say the Blackmagic doesn't have as much blues, if you boost the saturation, then those blues in that image are not going to be that strong, right? Just the calculation is not there. That's why, you know, a LUT stands for lookup table, and it's a calculation to get your log footage to the Rec 709 color space. So that's why it's so important to use the correct converter for your log footage. So now I'm going to jump into Premiere Pro. I've dragged my clip into Premiere Pro. I don't want to get too much on the basics of Premiere Pro here. If you're really new to, to Premiere Pro, then I would not recommend watching this video. I'll go back, watch some kind of like beginner's tutorial on Premiere Pro, how to start the program, how to get a sequence in. But for now, let's just say you've opened Premiere Pro, you've opened a new sequence, and you've dropped your clip inside that sequence. So I'm going to be using an adjustment layer to color my clip. I know this is only one clip, but normally I'd have a whole sequence of, of clips going on, and it's easier just to drag an adjustment layer over the clips and then color grade them all at once rather than color grading everything individually. You can do basic correction on each clip, and I would recommend this because obviously maybe the white balance was a little bit off or underexposed or overexposed. But as far as the whole color grading, I would definitely do it in an adjustment layer. So I'm going to do that right now. We're going to go down to the bottom here, and you can see adjustment layers there, although I've already created one here. So I'm going to drag that onto my clip, and now you can see it's just above the clip. So anything below it will be affected by that adjustment layer. Then in effects, we're going to find Lumetri. It will be in video effects, color correct, Lumetri color. Drag that onto your adjustment layer. And I'm going to open up Lumetri Scopes here just to be able to see what we're doing. Let's just talk really briefly about Lumetri Scope. So here you have a vector scope YUV. Make sure that is selected, and waveform. If your waveform is RGB, go down to here, click waveform type and press Luma. And select Luma, yeah? So you can see I've got that selected. This represents all the colors that are in the clip, with this line coming out here, which is your skin tone line. This is quite an interesting clip because a lot of things around it look like skin tones. But as you can see, it's kind of just close to the skin tone line. If I open up that pretty big, as you can see, that's pretty close to the skin tone line. It could be a tiny bit more towards the red to be more accurate, but when I start color grading it, we'll get into that. And this represents how dark and light the clip is, with 0 being black and 100 being completely white. So if your blacks are touching that space, which there's nothing really that black in this clip apart from that little handle there. If you're kind of crushing your blacks, you'll see they'll get crushed right down to the bottom here. And if you're kind of overexposed, you'll see it'd be hitting the 100% mark and be kind of crushed on the top there. So the first thing we're going to start with is basic correction. And in your input LUT, this is where you're going to see the LUT that you dragged over from the log to Rec 709. So I'm going to drop that menu down. And as I showed you before in the Finder, my LUT for my camera is there, the A74. I'm going to drag that on. I really like Type A because it's just a bit more subtle. The regular one is a bit more harsh, but if you find a couple, just kind of do it to taste. So that's, as I said, the first step we're going to take. And look at that, the image already now looks like a standard image you kind of maybe shoot off your phone, or so it's got that color already popping. Now, if you wanted to, all you could do from here is even just add a bit of contrast. It just depends on how kind of deep and how far you want to go into this. So if we go a bit lower now, you can see temperature and tint. And this is super important to make sure you have your white balance correct. Really, you should really have this correct in your shoot. It'll make things a lot easier in post rather than going through individual clips and having to correct the white balance. But if you have got the white balance not really correct in the shoot, then you can change temperature from here, making this tiny bit cooler, giving it more of a blue, or making it warmer that way. One thing you can do is you can have the drop tool here, and if you find either white or grey inside the shot, this can be a great thing to use. Now right now I could use this little instruments they've got there. Let's see how that looks. It hasn't really done too much. I think the white balance was pretty good in this shot. It could be a tiny bit too orange, but I kind of like it. It's quite a warm picture. And then you've also got the tint, which can make it more green or more pink, so that can be off as well, and you can color correct that. So with the exposure, that's going to bring everything either brighter or darker in the clip. So if I pull that down, you're going to see, look, it's going to make the whole thing darker or the whole thing brighter. I'm going to brighten up this clip actually because her face is a bit dark. So I'm going to go a bit brighter there. So yeah, what I would say with this though is be a bit careful, because obviously with exposure, bringing everything up and down, if you have just a sky that's a bit blown out, then you can just use the highlights or the shadows. And a lot of the time I actually prefer to do this because like say now her face is quite nicely exposed, then like the sky behind could be a bit blown out and I want to get the clouds in. If you just bring the highs down a bit, you're going to really retain the information inside the clouds. But apart from that, I think everything looks quite good here. You can also take the blacks down to black if you have blacks in your clip. If you see here my Luma curve, the blacks are moving down towards the actual black, and I think it's that little part just inside the dress there that he thinks is black, although I don't think that is black, so I prefer not to really pull that down too much. So yeah, I'm going to leave that where it is. But as I mentioned as well, if you really wanted to just leave it there, you can add a bit of contrast in just to make the color pop a little bit more. That's really it. You could just pretty much leave it there, and you could be pretty good, because now the picture is basically a Rec709 color. But we're not going to leave it there. We're going to go down to creative, and this is where you can either split. You can either get a creative LUT, which they have here, and as you can see, I've got quite a lot. Most of them are pretty bad, to be honest, I'm not going to lie, but you can either add a creative LUT on, or you can just carry on with a bit of vibrance and saturation just to keep the color looking as it kind of is now, but just make it pop a little bit more and add a bit more creativity into it, which I'm going to go for now, and then we'll come back and add a creative LUT on after. So with vibrance, you can just add a tiny bit of vibrance. I normally add about 50, but once again, kind of use to taste, you know. Really keep a look here on your vector scope, because you can see how much color you're adding into the image. I would try not to really go too much by eye, especially in the beginning. Afterwards, you get a bit more used to seeing how a kind of image looks and what looks right, so you can go a bit more on eye. But until then, I'd kind of try to use the vector scope. What the great thing is about vibrance is it's a bit like saturation, except saturation I find is so harsh. Vibrance is similar, but it's just a bit more softer. With the saturation, it can really pull out like very harsh skin tones, make everyone look a tiny bit orange. So you kind of always want to be a bit careful. But with vibrance, you can kind of push that up quite hard, and it still maintains a lot of really nice skin tones, and a lot of other colors don't get really like too pulled out. So I'm gonna add some vibrance there. Maybe, you know, about there, right? Say 61, and then we're going to add saturation. As I mentioned here, look, if I start adding the saturation, you can see already it's very, very aggressive in how it pulls out color. So I'd be very, very careful with this. You know, a lot of people just say when they're color grading, kind of pull out the saturation. I completely disagree with this. When I was learning to color grade, you know, when I was watching a lot of tutorials, they were kind of saying just pull out the saturation a bunch to put the colors in the image. And as I said, it just made everything look very orange, and it was just, it's not good. It's not a good way to color grade. Yeah, you don't want to just keep pulling out the saturation. So really on the saturation, I kind of a lot of the time just, I don't even want to add it too much in here, because I feel like if I'm going to add the saturation in, I'm going to kind of take down the oranges in the temperature a bit, and then I can add a bit more saturation, but I'm just being very careful here. I'm going to leave it at 105, 104. Yeah, I think that's okay. All right, so just had a little bit of play with that. I'm going to leave it like that for now. 66 on the vibrance and 110 on the saturation. And as you can see from the vector curve, that's added in so much color now. Also with these lines, try not to really go too far out of them. There should be a nice balanced image. If you're going over them, then you're probably adding too much color inside your image. We're going to go down to curves, and here you kind of want to add what's called like an S curve. So the best thing to do is pull down the shadows and take up the highs. You kind of want to be quite subtle with this. As you can see, this can be quite harsh as well. So I'm actually going to go back and just take the vibrance down, because I don't quite like what that's doing to the skin tone on the face. I want to go back and just see also how it looks on the exposure now, if I take the exposure back down. And then what I'm going to do is drag the blacks up a little bit, just to give it a kind of almost a bit of a matte look. You can really do this once again to taste. Sometimes it's nice to add in a bit more, you know, if you want to give it kind of a bit more of a an old kind of look, like a kind of a film, like burnt out kind of look. You can really drag this up. I'll show you an example now, and you know, give it that kind of like burnt out look. But obviously that is also quite a look in itself, so you got kind of, you know, you got to decide if you want to use that or not. I'm not going to use this section of curves here. The only thing I'd really use this for is to correct if there's a color that's just popping too much in the scene, then I would use that, but I haven't really felt the need to use that if your exposure is correct and your white balance is all right. So the next thing I'm going to kind of use is color wheels, drag the shadows to more of a bluey kind of look, bluey green. This is where DaVinci definitely comes in strong. I feel like when you're pulling the colors out here, DaVinci really can separate the colors a lot more deeper, whereas Premiere kind of pulls everything down quite aggressively in that kind of area. But then I'm going to drag the mid-tones up a tiny bit, find like reddy yellows. Yeah, that's quite nice. I'd spend a lot longer on this normally, you know, and all of these processes kind of jumping back and forth. Sometimes, you know, as I said, you might add some contrast in, and then you realize your exposure is a bit off, so jump up, correct the exposure a bit, like really, you know, imagine you're like painting here with color or so, and you're just kind of jumping back and forth. don't try and get a bit like, oh, I've corrected that section now, I'm not going to go back to the other section, because you know, you can do what you want, there's not really any rules to it. And then in the highlights, I'm going to go for more of a pinky blue. You can here go for more of an orange look, adds kind of a summer feel in the highs, like that looks quite nice as well. But I feel like with the highs, I'd be more delicate. They can really pull your image into a way you don't want them to, more aggressively than the other two for some reason. That's what I just personally find. But I quite like adding more of a natural, just a little bit of blue in the image. I find it looking a bit more natural. But orange did look quite nice there as well, especially because it's a nice summer's day, so it gives it more of that summery feel. And that's really it for color grading without any creative LUTs. It's not going to really be that different with a creative LUT. I'm just going to go through it though anyway. The only thing you might want to do, what's left of this, is a bit of vignetting. So you can just kind of pull that down. You can see it like makes the side of the screen a bit dark. Once again, be kind of gentle with this, but I kind of like that. I think this looks good to go. You know, you don't really need to do too much more to it. All right, now let's use creative LUTs and see how they look. So as I mentioned, I've got a lot of creative LUTs in here, just collected them over the years. You get quite strange ones. Like this is meant to be like Drive the movie, like they've emulated the kind of color palette from Drive the movie. You put that on, so obviously it looks quite strong, but you can turn the intensity down. So that doesn't look too bad actually. A lot of the time I do find these creative LUTs don't work that well. I think they just can be very harsh in the way they're pushing and pulling your image. I don't quite like that. This doesn't look too bad as a place to start, to be honest. Let me take it back up. This is part of the OSIRIS LUT Pack. This is a great one I used to use all the time. KDX, kind of give it more of that, once again, that summer feel, like oranges, very oranges in the high. Yeah, so you just go through these and you see what I mean. They can be very aggressive. You could, like I said, you can turn the intensity down though. But the one I use quite a lot is the M31 from the OSIRIS LUT Pack. As I mentioned, you can kind of grab that from the link below. And I just quite like the way this looks. I use this on quite a lot of things. I really like the way it pulls the blues out. But as you can see, that is quite stylized as well. So I might turn down the intensity a tiny bit, maybe put it on like 75. And now I'm going to go down to the vibrance and just turn that up a tiny bit to, you know, about 45, 50. Quite like the way that looks. I don't really think it needs much saturation. There's quite a lot of color already popping in the image, so I'm just going to leave that at 100 and then move down to curves here. So here I'm going to add, once again, just a little bit of an S curve. And once again, so I'm just going to do the same thing I did before, basically put the highs up and pull the lows down a tiny bit on the tail ends there. Gives it this kind of matte look. The creative LUT has really pulled out a lot of colors there though. You know, you can see like in the face, there's a lot of color pulled out. I might take the white balance down a tiny bit just because it's quite strong. And then if I move down to the color wheels, I'm going to add, you know, same again, like a bit of blues. But because of the creative LUT has already kind of taken care of a lot of this, you're literally just like manipulating it in the way you want a little bit, just to add a bit more color in that you kind of want. So I'm going to do that same thing again, add blues in the shadows, blue, greens and shadows, reddy oranges in the mid-tones, and then the highs, just going to add some blues again, kind of like that blue pink. Yeah, so there you go. That's kind of how the image would look. It's quite shaky. Need to add some warp stabilizer on that. And then also, once again, I can add some vignette in. So as you can see, you know, using a creative LUT is not really changed too much in terms of the process I'm going to use. It just kind of gives that base of like pulling and pushing the colors to where you want them in the beginning, and then you can kind of really go from there. But yeah, I look pretty happy with that, and you know, that's pretty much what I did for the client, and they were pretty happy with that. Super simple. Once you've gone from log to Rec 709, everything starts to fall into place from there. Really, that's like your base, and if you miss that step, it can be incredibly hard. You can do it with a bit of vibrance, contrast, start adding in colors, a bit of the saturation, but once again, I'd be really careful just kind of adding saturation just to pull out colors in your clip. But anyway, I hope this really helps. As I mentioned, this was really a big journey for me, and now it just seems quite simple. It's just I kind of color grade things by eye and stuff, but as I mentioned, I'm always still learning all the time. You know, I'm gonna start moving over to DaVinci now, and then I'm gonna learn to color grade there, so that's gonna be a whole new process in itself. But you know, learning is fun, and So always just keep learning. Please comment below if this helped you, or if you're facing any other issues. I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on this and help out if I can. And please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks.